person and online. I can see some faces that already have been on the session, so I'm not sure. Maybe someone needs to review his knowledge. So thank you, for joining once again. So today I will be talking about some very low-level stuff, low-level API in Drupal, which is at the same time very well undocumented one. And oftentimes it stays quite a mystery for many. So we will try to understand how Drupal handles data, finally. So I have a question. How many Drupal developers on the audience? Okay. Hopefully the rest are at least some kind of having some kind of a PHP background. Cool. So before I will start, I would like to say thank you for the whole webcam team. Thank you for organizing this event and for having me here. And also small shout out for the sponsors. Oh no, this is killing. It should. Yeah. So before we start, a few words about me. I'm Piotr Pachulski. I'm from Poland. So I took a pretty long flight to meet with you guys. Staying here for a couple of days. Also, I'm using this time to visit the company I work for headquarters, which is Box. You may ask me what the Box is. So Box is content cloud, staged content cloud right now. So it's a pretty big scale because 75% of Fortune 500 companies can be named our clients. That's cool, but what I'm doing there? So basically, I'm Drupal developer, and I'm responsible for all the marketing sites that are powered by Drupal. A bit of history. I'm working with Drupal since, thank you, since the late version 7. Before that, I used to be a Symfony developer, so for me it was quite a smooth transition. Transition because I've joined the Drupal team, and guys were asking me about some Symfony components, which are back the day were going to be included in Drupal 8. And I was asking them about some Drupalisms. Yeah, so you can find me on socials like Drupal.org and LinkedIn. Let's move on. What's in the agenda for today? We'll try to answer a very important question. First of all, why there was a need for some low-level API in Drupal, how this API works, and what are the moving parts there. Then finally, we'll be able to see how content entities are built in Drupal on top of the API. Hopefully, there will be enough time to go quickly through some use cases so you can see where you can use this API or where you are already using it, not knowing about this, and hopefully some questions on the end. Yeah, so quickly we'll start with some revision of your knowledge. I have a question to the audience. Anyone knows how many built-in variable types we currently has in PHP? Throw some numbers into me, like.
Here it next group knows.
Anyone? 20, 100? How many built-in variables we have? Three. Okay, close, but not enough. Currently, we have 9. So isn't it already remarkable that even though we have so many experienced people here, we do not have, we weren't quite sure how many variable built-in types we have, probably because PHP is a loosely typed language. But this might be the first reason why we need something more in Drupal. So we have something, things like nullable, integer, float, string, array, object, callable, and resource. I was always thinking that we have 7, but we have 9, callable and resources, 2 missing ones. Callable might be a simple function or a class, a method in a class, and then it becomes to be callable. A resource is something that is resource indeed, but it's outside of PHP. Cool. So why we need type data in the light of PHP? So we cannot rely on the type of certain data. So not always we cannot be sure what will be the exact type that is coming to us from external API, external class, and so on and so forth, because of the loosely typed language. Oftentimes one is not one, which is obvious. So we either use this comparison, which is not good in the end of the day. So again, next question for the audience, also still around PHP. So we have these two integers. So anyone knows what are the difference between these two guys? Any ideas? No? Okay, so the first one is a timestamp and the second one is just a random integer. So in PHP, we do not have this core possibility to add this metadata information that this is indeed a timestamp, right? However, in some cases, it might be useful to have some abstract representation of the thing that we would like to have. All right, so we know what are the limitations coming from PHP. How about Drupal 7? What was the problem back the day with Drupal 7? By the way, who is familiar with Drupal 7? Okay. There was no consistent way of defining the data type, probably because of PHP limitations. So timestamp, string, it was hard to define what exact metadata is related with it. We cannot easily say if field is translatable. It was possible, but hard. Access levels were hard to define. It was possible, but also tricky because of that. And we had this famous hook field validate. So the validation was very decoupled from the field API because also of these limitations. So least, but not last probably, it was very hard to build machine readable APIs in Drupal 7. If you are interested, you can go to the Drupal 7 REST module and see how not intuitive it was to build something like machine readable API for the data that Drupal stores. All right, so we know what are the limitations coming from PHP, what was the history of Drupal 7 and the limitations coming from there also. So, of course, community was aware of this problem. So using the occasion with building Drupal 8, they decided that, okay, maybe we'll go and add something more here. So they decided to create this Drupal org thread to implement API to unify entity properties and fields. It was back then more about refactoring the field API. But during the process, they decided that, okay, we need something more for the data representation to cope with all the problems I've just mentioned. So they've decided that let's have a low-level API that we'll name metadata API, for example. But during the process, finally, in one of the comments, they decided, let's go with TypedData. So if you ever hear this name, you know why and from where this is coming from. Yes, and as usual, of course, there was a very important question on the Drupal org, why another API, especially from the Drupal 7 community, because everything is just working fine. So community was able to introduce and to explain that we will benefit from this API in so many cases like entity property APIs, block layouts, rules, action APIs, tokens, CMI metadata, semantic mappings, even template variables. So yes, the decision was done and community prepared this description. What will be the TypedData API in Drupal? So it will be a very low-level API, and it will consist of data list, complex data, and data primitives. Pretty straightforward. But what's very important here is that they wanted this API to be built like it should be built in a way that it will allow us to in easy way transform one data representation to another, for example, from a less complicated one to the primitive, like email should be easily casted to a string representation. This was simply trying to resolve the problem with machine readable APIs for JSON API, for example. Yeah, so they've prepared this table with all the data types that we will have in this API. Right now we have a little bit of more of them, I guess. I will show quickly on the end if there is still time. So they prepared, I want you to go from the left to the right. So on the left, you have this representation, our abstract type, and on the right, you can see how it's going to be casted to some primitives. For example, duration can be casted easily to date interval object. Then it can be easily casted to date, like something like integer or anything else. All right. Of course, all this effort was because we want to be able to map something more complex. Like this is actually a JSON representation of something very simple, but we have at least 2 levels of complexity here, and we should be able to quickly cast from one representation like a JSON to our abstract type, and so on and so forth, back and forth. Yeah, so afterwards, TypedData get its own separated thread in Drupal to add a TypedData API for allowing metadata to be associated with data. Actually, this title is answering the question of the TypedData really is. And as you can see, it's closed and fixed, which is good and not so obvious oftentimes. And it was introduced in Drupal 8. So yes, finally in Drupal 8, we welcome our abstract representation for data. You probably remember from Drupal 7 that we had this giant associative arrays to represent everything. And starting from Drupal 8, we had this abstract representation. And like going from the top to the bottom, we have entity. So entity may have some properties. Properties can have some items. And finally, into the very bottom, we have the value. So everything is beautifully wrapped together with abstract representation. Cool. So you may ask me if I want to know more about this API, where should I go? Of course, you can go to Drupal.org. You will find there a stream of class names, interfaces names, and other descriptions which are completely valid, but at least for me, they are not explaining what are the moving parts and what you can do with this API. Yeah, you can also find on Drupal.org my favorite diagram, which is explaining what the API really is. It's my favorite one because I'm revisiting it from time to time, but I'm still not sure if I understand it. So don't worry, I'm not going to use it today. I just call it chicken diagram. Yeah, so if not Drupal.org, what else you can do? You can, of course, buy a book from Daniel Sipos. Right now it's Drupal 10 module development. I'm not sure about Drupal 11. But in my case, when I was preparing for this session, it was back the day Drupal 8 module development. And author was kind enough to provide us 7 from nearly 600 pages book dedicated to our very important API. You will find there also a stream of class names, interfaces names, and so on, but also some good examples. But the session is, this chapter is still pretty, how to say it, hard to digest. And even the author is saying on the very end of this chapter that I know that was a very difficult section to follow. I just want you to know that at least we have this API in Drupal. You can always get back and try to understand what's in this section. So what I have done is simply I get all the sources I can get from the internet and from the book, and I've hopefully prepared some easily explainable examples for you. So what is TypedData? So first of all, it wraps values of any kind of complexity. You have here a license plate number, which is actually United Europe's Spanish license plate number. It's a leftover from the DrupalCon Barcelona. And as you can see, we have at least 4 or 3 pieces of information here, like the flag, the country identifiers, some numbers, and so on. Without the wrapper, it will be just a random data. But whenever it has the wrapper, it gives the additional meaning to the data it wraps. And basically, this is the very, very good example of what TypedData is doing in Drupal. And on top of this, you can imagine you can build more and more complex structures. So you can have a license plate, a car, and so on. So it's unlimited, let's say. Okay. So what are the main components in TypedData? I was thinking for a bit of time how I can explain this to at least leave you with some brief overview of this API. So I will use some cooking example because for me it's pretty straightforward. So first of all, we may have some very, let's say, call it primitive ingredients like a cup of milk and some butter, eggs, and so on. These guys, ingredients, will be in our TypedData. It will get named TypedData type plugins. We have three main components here. The second one is, anyone knows what this might be? It's recipe. It's a recipe, very good. So the recipe will be data definition. So we have two main components, our API. So anyone knows what the third required component to make? Once again, chicken. Chicken will be here in the ingredients. So if we have ingredients, if we have recipe, who is needed? Good, chef. Exactly. Very good. And in TypedData, this is the TypedData manager. And these three components are doing the magic in Drupal in terms of handling data. So as a result, mixing the components by chef, the cook, we can have something like more complicated. But getting back to the recipes, just want to point out that this recipe is a kind of a different recipe in Drupal because it does not contain at this point any values. It has the ingredients, but it does not say you how many eggs you need, how much milk, and so on. The manager is doing the magic. So manager is building like a cake. And then you can build up even more complex structures like a beautiful dinner, right? From this beautiful dish. And then people get know together. Probably oftentimes it might end up with marriage, which is oftentimes very, very complicated structure, believe it or not. Yeah, so this is how things can build up just straight from some string primitive. Yeah, it's time, I guess, for the code example. But before I start, I would like to ask one question because I know this is an IT industry. Anyone knows what the fried egg is? Some setup? If not, this is the fried egg. Just to be clear, what we are talking about here. So using our API, how we'll prepare the fried egg? First of all, we will need some small recipes based on some small primitives for the ingredients. So we have definitions for build on strings, and using the data definition, we can create a wrapper for them, set the label, and so on. So we have the ingredients like egg, salt, pepper, butter, whatever it might be. Then we need to create a recipe with the ingredients. So we are using map data definition, which comes straight from API, TypedData API. And you may ask me what the map data definition is. So map data definition simply is something that was created to wrap this associative arrays from Drupal 7. So even though we move to abstract layers, we still have like representation for the associative arrays. So if we have the recipe, we can set the label for it. We can, of course, set some properties like egg, salt, pepper, and so on. Okay, so we have ingredients, we have recipe. Who is needed now? The chef, cook, whatever the name. TypedData manager, the third ingredient. And what the manager is doing is simply right now injecting values into the recipe to get the instance of the result of his job. So as you can see, automatically we are assigning the correct ingredients to the correct structure that we've prepared. And it's way more easy to be machine readable than associative arrays from Drupal 7. So we have a beautiful instance of the fried egg. What we can do with it, we can get the definition, the fried egg, we can get the label, can go one level down to get the ingredient, get the value of the ingredient, label of the ingredient, and so on and so forth. All right. Cool. Right now, because we are quickly heading to content entities in Drupal, the complexity will go quickly up. So I decided to prepare some icons for you to more easily understand, hopefully more easily understand what's going on there. So we have ingredients like this dinosaur from the egg, some recipes, and the cook manager chef. So let's have a look how the fried egg example will look like then. So we may have like some ingredients, egg, salt, pepper, butter, and this is wrapped into the recipe for the fried egg. And then comes the manager with some values, and as a result, we have the fried egg instance. And then on top of this, we can build more and more complex structures like beautiful dinner or whatever it might be. And then we can wrap this in even more complex structures to have like a beautiful day or beautiful weekend or something like this. And in the very end, you end up with marriage or something like this. So going from cup of milk to the marriage is the good example how things are building up in Drupal. Yeah, finally, we will get a chance to see how entities are built on top of our API. I was also thinking and preparing myself how to represent somehow by image what is happening there. So basically, this is the whole story. You have the first tuple, which is sitting on a row, and this is our TypedData API. This is the lowest level. And then comes another one. Do you need help? And then somehow he's stuck, and comes another one. And the turtles are piling up. Just don't ask. Everything that is added to Drupal is piling up on top of our API. So oftentimes where you are X debugging or debugging the variables in Drupal, you may have a feeling that things are looking like this. It's just because of this thing that everything is built on top of type data. Cool. Right. So, as you probably know, content entities are built of two types of fields. The first type are base fields, and the second one are the configurable fields. We will start with base fields. So you may expect there's some recipe for the base field, and of course, as you might expect, we have base field definition, which is a recipe for the base field, or base field override. What is override? Override is when you are changing anything in the base field, because then the field needs to be exportable, so it's a base field override recipe then. Then comes the manager with some values, then you get the field item list, and you have the base fields described. Configurable fields. This is a little bit different story. Of course, we might expect some recipe for the configurable fields, but somehow you get a field config. So what's going on here? Simply like field config extends configuration entity, but implements in the same time the data definition interface. What it means in simple words? It means that it plays two roles. The first role is to be exportable, because we need to export the configurable fields, but at the same time, we would like to be a data definition interface, which means it should be a recipe for some data representation. And with values, we also will get the field item list instance. All right. So if we have these two types of fields, we may have a recipe for something more complicated. And the recipe will be entity data definition. Probably you've seen somewhere this. And this guy extends complex data definition base. I would like you to pay attention to all the namings in blue, because all the namings in blue are coming straight from TypedData. So you can easily see how TypedData is a foundation for everything that it's built. So we have recipe for entity. So when we'll provide some values by manager, we will get an instance of entity adapter that extends TypedData. There you go. So straight from our API. And what the entity adapter is? Entity adapter is simply data type plugin that defines our entities in Drupal. All right, and actually this screen is a perfect example why backend developer should never be a UI developer. Designer, let's say. Okay, I've promised you that probably we'll get to the bottom. So let's examine what we have in the lower levels, like in the base fields, for example. Do we have any type data there? Yeah. So base field, we might expect that we may have some field item data definition, which is a small recipe for an item in the field. Then when fill up with values, we might expect some kind of a field type, depending what is the type of the field. In our example, it will be string item that extends string item base, and this guy extends map plugin. Again, map, our favorite one, associated varies. So as you can see here, we have type data also on the very bottom. Then another field type, another instance of field type, and then wrapping this together, we have a recipe which is base field definition that extends straight from type data, which is list data definition. But this is not the end. When fill up with values, we will get field item list, which extends also straight from type data. So as you can see, here, and here we have type data API as a foundation. And if we are going up and up, everything is building all on top of it. Yeah, right. So we know why, we know how the process was looking like of implementing this API, how it is used in building data representations in Drupal. I will now quickly go through the core data type plugins that we have in core right now, and then through some use cases. Probably you would like to know where you can use it and how to use it and so on. All right. So right now, as you can see, we have a little bit more of the types that rather than the table I've showed you before. So we have something like any binary boolean. I would like to have a small stop around the decimal data. We have map, our favorite one, stream data, language reference, the famous problems with translations in Drupal 7, item lists used in entities, and so on. You may ask me what the NA is. I was also curious. What is the NA? And basically, NA is something that you can use whenever any other type is not fitting in. So then you can use any. I've checked it if it is used anywhere in core, and yes, it's used like in the datetime item, date range item, and other representations. As you can see in the red square, we have data definition created based on the any type. All right. So getting back to the decimal data. So after presenting this session on Polish DrupalCamp, one of Polish contributors asked me if I'm aware of this ticket, which was hanging for a bit quite of time from 2017, that decimal item should not use string. After this session, we decided that it's pretty straightforward. Decimal item should not be string. So Robert prepared the fix. Quickly, we approved it, and it's fixed and it's core. So I have this small brick after this session that was added to the core, which I'm proud of. Yeah. If you would like to have some good examples of the type data, you can go to this repository, which is a Matplan repository. Probably you know the guy. You can use the QR code later on or right now. You will find there some pretty good examples, like how we can use primitives and maps, most common one. For example, primitive, you can see that you can create an email, and how easy it is to add a constraint comparing to Drupal 7. So it's not decoupled right now. And of course, you have on the very bottom the data type manager, so our chief, which is injecting some value, and as a result, we have a valid email. Let's go to some more complex representation. You can use the map data definition to create something that will have more properties like a number and currency code, for example, which will be some representation of some, I don't know, something like a price. As you can see, you can, of course, add a constraint like for the currency code. Then comes the manager, our chef, injecting some values like number, currency code, we'll get an instance of a price. Cool. Right. So if you would like to know what are the probably most commonly used scenarios for type data is probably when you are consuming external APIs. Why? Because you can build in the correct structure, we allow you to consume external API just using one line of code. And this is the 5jars blog, which is showing us pretty good example of some simple structure in JSON that can be consumed using one line. All right. So let's imagine we have this JSON representation, which is at least 2 levels of complexity. We have the first level, which are results, status, and command. The second level are the results itself, the list, with some primitive data there. So first of all, we would like to create a representation for the first level and for the second level. So we will need ingredients and definitions. Let's go with the definition for the first level. As you can see, we have status, command, and results. And the results is a list data definition because we have a list of results there, which will be created based on our custom demo results ingredient, let's say. This is the custom ingredient. Then second level of complexity, we'll get the items on the list, which is title, body, and author, created on some primitives like string and integer, which is pretty straightforward. And of course, our custom demo response that will handle like the whole ingredient as the result. All right, so we have everything we need. So looking from the top to the bottom, we are creating the definition based on our custom demo response, right? Then we get the manager. We are informing manager about our definition. And then, as you can see on the very, very bottom, I'm using just one line to consume all the JSON that I've showed you. Just because we've created the structure, it's one line to consume the data from the endpoint. And everything is inside our data representation right now. So there you go. That was it. Hopefully, I put some info into your memory. Hopefully, these icons will stay with you for a little bit longer time. But we have at least 3 main components: the type data, and ingredients, recipes, and the manager who is doing the magic. And that we have something on the very bottom in Drupal. Thank you very much. Any questions? Do we have something on the chat? Maybe.
Nothing in the chat.
All right.
You said you used to be a Symfony developer. Would you consider this portable? Like if I wanted to use this in a plain PHP project, could I grab it and use it?
Yeah, I got this similar question on one of the conferences. Do we have something similar in Symfony? I was not sure back the day, but I've checked and we do not have anything like this in Symfony. Is it portable? Probably yes. Probably yes. But is it any business use case to use it in Symfony? I'm not sure. In Drupal, of course, because we need to model all the content structures, it's good to have something on the very bottom that will give us the additional meaning for the data, right? Yeah. All right, thank you.